bank account change requests, how controllers can stay one step ahead. An expert practices presentation brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. And before we get started, I want to share some brief housekeeping items with you. First, we'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation. So please use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our experts questions. Next, this webinar is CP eligible with 4 polling questions. So please, again, use your control panel to answer questions. Also regarding CP, you'll receive a brief survey directly after the webcast today, so please complete. And finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. With that, I'm very pleased to share a word about our partner and sponsor, Vendor Info, part of Financial Operations Networks, or FON, which provides specialized self-service vendor portals that bring focused, comprehensive, and timely tools and support for collecting, verifying, and managing vendor information. Vendor Info meets the changing internal and external requirements for security, controls, compliance, efficiency, and scalability. FON was founded by the leadership team behind Paytech and the Accounts Payable Network, and has been instrumental in helping thousands of senior financial professionals keep their operations ahead of risk, efficiency, and cost avoidance curves since 2001. Learn more at vendorinfo.com. All right, well, with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our 2 panelists, Phil Binko, Chief Executive Officer of Vendor Info, and Mark Brousseau, President of Brousseau and Associates. Gentlemen, welcome, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you all for joining us today. So if you're like most controllers, you've seen the risk landscape shift dramatically in the last few years. According to the Association for Financial Professionals, 71% of all organizations were targeted by payments fraud last year alone. And over 1/3 of those incidents involved fraudulent bank account change requests. During today's webinar, we're going to explore why these scams are proliferating, how they exploit accounts payable processes that in many cases we've been using for years, and what practical steps you can take to prevent them. Here's a roadmap for today's session. We'll start by discussing the rising threat landscape, what's changed and why the risk is higher now. Next, we'll look at where traditional processes fall short, highlighting those gaps that might be leaving your organization exposed. Then we'll explore best practices to mitigate fraud. And finally, we'll talk about some key considerations for automation, and we'll leave some time for your questions. But before we dive in, well, let's get a sense of what you're seeing in your own operations with our first poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. I want to know, what do you see as the biggest fraud risk in your AP process today? What do you see as the biggest fraud risk in your AP process today? Is it phishing scams and business email compromise? Is it phony bank account change requests? Is it insider fraud and manual process exploitation? Is it duplicate or altered invoices? Or is it not? Are you not so sure? Maybe think it's something else. Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. So Phil, the fact is that fraud has always been a big part of AP and any organization. What makes it different today?
Well, thanks, Mark, and hi, everyone. The resources that the fraudsters have with which to ply their trade are more numerous and more powerful and less expensive than ever before. Folks are we're being attacked really in accounting, in accounts payable, and procure to pay, in treasury by very, very well financed, very smart, diligent, and patient adversaries who know what they're doing, and they work with the laws of large numbers. Their weapons are effective, and this is only becoming more problematic with tools such as AI that are really available to everybody, and in many cases for free. It's a very tough situation that we're in today with regard to the tools that the fraudsters are working with, Mark.
Phil, how well prepared do you believe most organizations are to deal with the types of threats that you just described from a systems and process standpoint?
Yeah, folks are taking the precautions. Certainly in many cases, they're manual activities, which open up a Pandora's box of other problems because they're really not trackable, they're not auditable. They can be inconsistently applied because we're really working with individuals and not with a system that provides standardized processes. It's a tough situation. I think people are doing their best to be prepared. They don't always implement or have access to the tools that they need to be totally prepared.
We asked our attendees, what do you see as the biggest fraud risk in your accounts payable process today? 56% of our attendees, oh, the results are gone. There they are. 56% of our attendees identified phishing scams and business email compromise as the biggest fraud risk in their AP process. 22% identified phony bank account change requests. I want to know from the audience, just what types of schemes are you encountering? I want you all to open up the Q&A tool on your screen. Go ahead, do it now. I'll wait. Open up your Q&A tool and type in what types of scheme you're most commonly seeing in your AP process. Phil, while they do that, I'm curious, are controllers aware of the threats that their organization is under? Just how concerned are they about these new schemes that you described?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. And controllers are certainly becoming more and more aware of of these issues. I'm not sure that that was actually the case a few years ago. The attacks weren't necessarily as prevalent going back 5 years, and when they did attack, people didn't necessarily know how to deal with them. But things are percolating to the top, and we see more controllers, more directors of accounting and finance, more VPs and more CFOs who have actually made fraud prevention in accounts payable and disbursements a top priority in their organization.
What's really sobering is that it's not just that the risk of fraud is higher these days, it's that it's accelerating. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center reports that business email compromise, which you all identified as your biggest threat, now has losses exceeding $3 billion a year. That's coming in at about a 20% increase year over year. These are staggering numbers. In fact, in the United States, we lose more money each year to business email compromise schemes than to bank robberies. Now, I know bank robberies are far more exciting than BEC schemes, but these are the reality, folks. Now, why is it that we're experiencing more and more fraud these days, whether it's BEC or account takeovers or phony bank account change requests? Well, there's a couple things really driving it all. And first and foremost among it is corporate America's dependence on email. Nearly 90% of invoice and payment communications are still flowing through unsecured email channels. And unfortunately, folks, while that might seem convenient, it makes spoofing and interception easier than ever. And then you combine that with those sophisticated cyber criminal tactics that Phil was describing, AI, text generation, and deep fakes and cloned logos. And now we've got these fraudulent messages that appear like the real McCoy. What's more, we're also seeing more and more cases of data breaches and identity theft. And with billions of personal and corporate records exposed each year, it's no wonder that we have cases where fraudsters are able to infiltrate even the most hardened systems. They have endless ammunition when you think about it for their targeted attacks. We also have weak security measures, and I know some of you are cringing right now and saying, hold on, buddy, we've put millions of dollars into our firewalls. But the reality is that when you think about what resides inside those firewalls, it's really outdated. Those antiquated manual and semi-automated systems in AP, AR, and elsewhere, well, the fact is it makes it too easy for unauthorized users to access our sensitive supplier and customer data. Once they get in, and you don't know how they'll get in, now they can really have free will. I recently had dinner with a CFO of a very large property management company. And he told me that his company was recently the victim of a ransomware attack. And I didn't know this, but there's apparently a code of conduct among these ransomware hackers. If you're willing to give them their ransom money, they'll tell you how they broke in. And then you have 30 days in which to plug the gap, or else all bets are off and they'll come back for their data again. Well, after coughing up $480,000, you heard me right, what they discovered is that over in their call center of the company, they had some communication software that was residing on Windows 6. And what the fraudsters were able to do was infiltrate the network through that PC, that system, and worm their way over to the finance department and be able to secure the data. That was a $480,000 lesson learned in why we are only as good as the weakest link in our systems. We also have lots of insufficient staff training. And frankly, in AP in particular, what most of us do is what I call a set it and forget it approach to training our staff. We sit down a new employee, we tell them some do's or don'ts, we pat them on the back, and we send them on their way. The problem is that fraud schemes are constantly evolving, and we need to make sure that our teams know what to look for. PricewaterhouseCoopers estimates that fewer than 1 in 3 finance employees are receiving regular fraud prevention training. If there's nothing else you do today, this is the one you must do. You must find ways to keep your team aware of the threats. When you put all of these together, as we're going to see in just a moment, these really feed into a small number of really effective schemes that are targeting our accounts payable departments.